I'm hoping that helps if you get stuck. All right. So when we did it by graphing, what did we do yesterday? Plug it in where? The y equals in our calculator, right? So that's all you got to do for. Now, some of you were forgetting where you looked then. All right, so I need an x squared. I got that in there. So plus 3x plus 2, right? Right, and I just hit graph, and there's my parabola. Okay, it looks to me like it's a -1, but I'm not positive. All right, so I'm going to look at my table, which is second graph. Oh, it's -1 and -2. There's two of them. All right. So I'm looking for where the y equals 0. But my answers are the x values, -2 and -1. So when we do it graphically, we're looking to see where the parabola intersects with the x-axis. In this case, it did twice. Sometimes it's only once. Sometimes it's none. Okay, so if we're doing it graphically and it doesn't cross the x-axis, we're going to say no solution. Right? There is a solution. Okay, but graphically we couldn't find it. All right, we'll have to do it a different way when there's, and we're learning different ways. Okay, yesterday we learned 2 ways, right? Today we're going to learn another one. All right, so you're looking to see those x-intercepts, where it crosses the x-axis, which was at those 2 spots, -2, 0, and -1, 0. All right, 2 separate points. Questions on the graphing method? Okay. Square root method is getting the squared part alone. So I have to move the 2 and the 4 over. How do I move the 2 over? Anybody? Minus it, right? Subtract it. When you go to the opposite side of the equation, you do the opposite, right? So the opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. So now I have 4 times the quantity, x minus 1 squared equals 8. Is the squared part alone yet? No, I got to move the 4 over. This means 4 times the x minus 1, right? So to move it to the opposite side, I have to divide by 4. So now I have x minus 1 squared equals 2. All right? Now I do what to both sides? Square root. We want to get rid of the squared part, right? So when I square root a square, what do they do to each other? They cancel. So all that's left is the x minus 1. Or think of it like this. The square root of something squared is itself. Okay? So I have an x minus 1 on the left. Now, when I do this step on the other side, I have to put a plus or minus symbol in front of my answer. All right? And is 2 a perfect square? Can I do a factor tree and pull out any perfect squares? No. So I just leave it as the square root of 2. I'm not finished because x isn't alone yet. How do I get x alone? Add the 1, right? Cole, you okay over there? Caleb, you okay? All right, so that's our answer. But there's 2 answers there. There's 1 plus the square root of 2 and 1 minus the square root of 2. All right?
Does it matter which side the one? Like, can it be like next to the square root?
Oh, If you put it
Like,
plus 1 out that way,
no, like.
you need to, if you're putting it on the back, you should put plus 1.
Okay.
Or do you say it should be right in front of it? No. If I was multiplying by 1, I could put it right in front of the radical. But since I'm adding the 1, I got to put it in front of that plus or minus. You're welcome. All right. Any of these homework problems you have a question, I passed out some answer sheets that you guys could look at. Before I can solve it, though, I have to set it equal to what? 0, right? So make sure you move the 6x over and the 3 by subtracting 6x and adding 3, right? So when you put it in your calculator, it should be that, right? This one, I like to keep the x squared positive, so I would just bring the 2x over by subtracting. That's how I would put it in the calculator, okay? And then this one, I'm going to subtract the 3x and put it in the right spot, you know, A, B, C order, right? Put in the right order. Any of those you want to look at? Okay. So I go to my y equals, and it's x squared minus 2x, so I'm just gonna, and then it's got the plus 2, right? So I'm good there. And then I hit graph. And what happens? It doesn't cross. Yeah, graphically there's no answer because it doesn't cross the x-axis. Okay, there is a non-real answer, an imaginary one. You know, I gave you an example yesterday, right? With the little I. We're going to talk about that more tomorrow. Okay, but Cindy, I took the 3x from the left over to kept it positive. I like to keep the x squared, the a value. I like to keep positive. Okay. I like to have the smiley faces instead of frowns. Okay. Any other questions on those? All right. What about 12 through 16? Any of those you want me to go over? It makes sense, the ones that you looked at, looking at them? Okay. All right, then. Yesterday we did graphing, right? We talked about a root. We went over that. Okay, we did these two yesterday. Today we're going to do the factoring way. Okay? So we're going to factor our quadratics, which we practiced, last Friday and Thursday and Friday, right? So hopefully you didn't forget your factoring. So again, just like yesterday with the graphing way and the square root way, well, the square root way we didn't have to really worry about setting it equal to 0. But for factoring and for graphing, we want to set it equal to 0 when we start. So my first step in this example would be to subtract the 45 from the right side and get it to the left side. Okay? What's my A value? 1. What's my B value? -4. What's my C value? -45. We all okay with that? All right. When my A value is 1, well, first of all, I should say, is there a GCF? When we factor, we should always look for a GCF, right? But there's not a GCF, right? So it's got 3 terms. So, we had that steps for factoring. Number 2 step was a difference of squares, but it only had 2 terms. So this has got 3, so it's not one of those. Number 3 step, I haven't showed you how to factor those. Some are difference of cubes, but they only have 2 terms. Okay? So number 4 was a special trinomial. Okay, that's when the first and the third term are both positive perfect squares. Are they both positive perfect squares? No. So then it's number 5, a regular trinomial. Okay? And these were the easy ones. When a was 1, I could go ahead and make my 2 sets of parentheses to factor it. The only way to get x squared is x times x. So that's taken care of. All right? Now I think about the factors of the c value, the negative 45. Right? What times what is negative 45 added is negative 4. Rock, what are they? What's the right set? I'll write them all out if you want. Yeah, good. He said negative 9 and 5, which is the right pair, right? When I multiply those two, I get my negative 45, and when I add those two, I get the negative 4, which is the b value. No. If you use negative 5 and 9, you'll get a positive 4. And if you look at the b, it's a negative, okay? So that does make a difference. So make sure your signs are the right one. Okay. So we got to use the positive 5 and the negative 9. All right? Now, if I multiply a number times another number and the answer is 0, what must be true about one of those two numbers? If the answer is 0 and I'm multiplying two numbers, one of them has to be 0, right? That's called the zero product property, right? So either this x plus 5 equals 0, or this x minus 9 equals 0. So we solve those two little equations to get our roots, our answers. All right, so I got to subtract 5 to get x by itself here. So one of my answers is negative 5. And I have to add 9 here. So one of my other answer is 9. If I were to do this graphically, where's my parabola across the x-axis? At negative 5 and 9. Okay? If I put it in my calculator. Did it graph? But now we're doing it by factor. Questions on the first example? Good? Landry, you all right? Good. All right. Is there a GCF? Yeah, what is it? 2. So factor the 2 out. William, when I pull the 2 out, what's the first term become? Good. What's the middle term become? I pull the 2 out of 8. Divide. 4, right. And then what? 3, good. All right, so we're going to divide. Once we pull out a GCF, we divide it into all 3 terms, right? All right, now it's a regular trinomial where a is 1, so I can make my 2 sets of parentheses. Now, what's the trick I told you about when it's a positive c? What do we know about these two? They're both B1, so they're both minus. So what two negative numbers multiply to give me positive 3, but add to give me negative 4? Yeah, the only possibility to get 3 is 1 and 3, right? Multiply. So, can I say 2 equals 0? Is that acceptable? No. If there was an x out here with the 2, then I could say 2x equals 0. Okay, but since it's just a number, you can't say 2 equals 0. That's not true. But I can say x minus 1 equals 0, or x minus 3 could be 0. Okay? So what's my two answers? What am I going to do with that minus 1? It's going to become a positive 1, right? What's going to happen with this 3? Positive 3. So there's my two solutions, my two roots for that equation. If I graphed it, the parabola would cross at 1 and 3. Does it open up or down that parabola? Up, because it's a positive 2, a value, right? Questions? All right, we got a third one here. What's the first step? Move the 2 over, right? I heard somebody tell me. Is there a GCF in this problem? No. What's my a value? 3. So it's not quite as easy as the last two, right? What do I have to do with the 3 and the negative 2? Multiply those, right? So we're multiplying these to get negative 6, and then we're looking for factors of negative 6 that add up to negative 5. Sophia, what would that be? You meant 1 and negative 6, didn't you? Yeah, that's what I thought you said. Right? 1 times negative 6 is negative 6, but 1 plus negative 6 is negative 5. Now, since I got a 3 there for A, what did we do at this point? What do we do with those? We split them up to make the negative 5x, right? So it's plus 1x minus 6x, and then the minus 2. We turned it into a grouping problem. That's how we did these, remember? So we grouped the first two, last two, and since our 6 has a negative in front, we put it inside the group. All right? So what's the GCF of the first group? 1x, right? Or just x. And what's 3x squared divided by x? Thanks, you guys. What's x divided by x? 1, thanks. Now, when that negative's there in front of that third term in that group, okay, we always pull the negative out. Okay? What else goes into 6 and 2? 2. And what's negative 6x divided by negative 2? Positive 6, right? What's a negative 2 divided by a negative 2? Positive 1. We want these two quantities to be the same, right? So since they're the same, we can finish. It is factorable, okay? One of my factors is 3x plus 1. What's my other factor? The x minus 2. You guys did pretty good on those worksheets when we did those. All right, remember that? Are we finished? No, we got to find out what x equals, the two answers, right? So, either x plus 1 equals 0, or x minus 2 equals 0. So I would add 2 to get this one. So one of my answers, one of my roots is 2. Here I would subtract 1, and then what? Divide by 3, right? What's that answer? Right, just a fraction sometimes. That's okay. Nothing wrong with a fraction. Okay? Questions? Making sense? So, what is this method of solving a quadratic equation? Factoring, yes. All right, sometimes they'll ask you, instead of saying solve by factoring, they'll say find the zeros of the function. It means exactly the same thing we just did on those last three. Just solve it. Find out what x equals. All right, so go ahead and solve that by factoring. I would factor anytime I could. Unless they told me to use a different method, I would try to factor. If they tell me to solve by graphing, then we use our graphing calculator. If there's no b value, we'll use that square root method. If there's no x in our problem. But you might be able to still factor if there's no x in it.
It's negative 8.
No, but I got. I got the whole shampoo. So like, it's always so.
He's opening his phone. No, like you're
No.
you're actually doing that.
I got home my medicine, like, how much did you pay for that?
Or like
Right,
I
that's
want
right.
to charcoal. I picked these.
I don't know.
I would have picked that. If it works for the side of the arrow, yeah,
That's sad.
Hey.
Cause my hair through, like, both my hair.
Well, they don't die in the game. So we go 58, or the negative 8 to do that.
All right,
You're still operating?
let me pick on Mason. What did you factor that into?
No, it's not extra, sorry, it's
Listen, please.
plus 2x. So I factored in with 1x into
Well, wouldn't it be just x times x for the x squared? Right. Okay. Landry, what'd you have?
I didn't know, I'm looking at it right now.
Alright, when A is 1, you don't have to do like we did this last one. When A is 2 or bigger, we got to do and make it the 4. When A is 1, like this one, you can go right to x times x. You don't have to worry about making it a grouping problem. Save yourself some time. So what are the factors of negative 8? All we have to do is look at the C, right? Negative 1 times 8, or positive 1 times negative 8. Negative 2 times 4, or positive 2 times negative 4. When we add those, we get positive 7, negative 7, positive 2, negative 2, right? Look at the B. Which one of these four do I want? Right, Cindy? Remember, we're setting it equal to 0. Easy, guys, on that table. All right, so what are my two answers?
2 and -4.
Right. Positive 2, negative 4. Okay?
Okay.
Question.
Wait, why did I get?
So again, we're doing, when they say find the zeros, we're doing the same thing. It's just a different way of asking to solve the equation. They're just, that's function form. When it's a function, they say find the zeros. When it's an equation, they say find the roots. They mean the same thing. All right, are we getting this? All right, so if I go this, what am I going to do to factor? What's number 1 in our steps? Always. Nolan, what is a GCF? Yeah, there's an X in both. Okay? What's x squared divided by x? X. What's negative 8x divided by x? All right? So, I set them both equal to 0. That's finished. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. So there's my two answers, 0 and 8. Okay? My
What was the step?
thing went bad, didn't it?
Yeah.
What?
How'd you get the x and then x minus 8? Like what happened
I
there?
pulled out a GCF. X went into both of them. So I factored out the x. And then x squared divided by x is x. And negative 8x divided by x is negative 8. Okay? You understand? I have one more example. Do you want me to do it? Okay. Is there a GCF? No. Okay? So, again, we're just setting it equal to 0. What's 2 times 12? 24. All right? Since the 12's positive, my factors are both going to be whatever b is. So they're both negative. So negative 1 and negative 24, negative 2 and negative 12, negative 3 and negative 8, negative 4 and negative 6. Which pair do I want?
Negative 8.
Because that adds up to what? Negative 11, the b. Okay? So remember, when it's 2 or bigger here, we have to rewrite it as a grouping problem. So we put minus 3x minus 8x instead of minus 11x. So we broke that up into those two from our little side bar there. Group them. Since the third term's minus in front of it or negative, we're going to keep it in our group. What's the GCF of the first group? X. What's 2x squared divided by x? Negative 3x divided by x. Since there's a negative there, pull it out. What goes into those two? 4. What's negative 8x divided by negative 4? 2x. 12 divided by negative 4? Negative 3. Is it working out like I want? Yeah. I got 2x minus 3 in both parentheses. So that's one factor. And x minus 4 is the other. All right? So now I set them both equal to 0. to get my two answers. The more you do of these, this part, you could probably do in your head. Okay? Which is fine. But if you're not sure, just set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. So we got a fraction here, 1.5. All right? All right, I have a worksheet for you guys to do for homework. Watch the video if you get stuck.
Yes. He has to be able to do everything.